Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Current Affairs. I'm Frank Danhauer, your host for today's talk with Elana Freeland on the decades of geoengineering. Elana has spent the past 2 decades researching the topic of her talk today. Her latest book in a 3-part series on geoengineering has just come out this year called Geoengineered Transhumanism, and is the most comprehensive book on the subject by far. I am sure you'll find this talk to be insightful and current in understanding the kind of world we live in right now. Before we begin, I wish to invite everyone participating in this talk today to actively formulate questions and join with us in an online discussion afterwards with Elana. It is preferable to ask your question directly to her. You can do this by selecting the hand icon at the bottom of the screen. You may also write your question in the chat window or the QA box below. I will try to get through all of them in the time we have. Any questions we don't get to, please leave them in the comment section below the recording of today's talk. I am extremely pleased to announce that Elana Freeland will be a presenter at this year's 5th annual International Mystech Conference being held right here in Seattle area and online August 11th through the 13th. The theme of this year's conference is consciousness, AI, and virtual reality. Everyone attending our conference gains new insights about the mysteries of technology. Our lineup of distinguished speakers approach the topic of technology through the lens of spiritual science. Because of this, everyone is sure to come away with a new appreciation of the impact technology has on us in our evolution as both physical and spiritual beings. We'll all learn new ways of thinking that can help us meet the future challenges of our modern age. This is a 3-day, 20-speaker event, and I won't lie to you, it will be intense, but it will be well worth it. Everyone signing up before July 1st will receive $50 off, plus have a chance to win Loudsinga headphones. These headphones retail for $2,200 and are the result of years of research in applied cymatics. If you're curious about cymatics and how the technology applies to the headphones, sign up and join us for the conference. Ralph Titus and the CEO of Loudsinga will be at the conference with a booth and a presentation of their technologies. For more details and to sign up for the conference, please go to events.mystech.org. With that said, what is our current state of affairs? Have you been noticing unusual weather lately? Perhaps more rain and flooding, or more heat and drought? Hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, and the like. Here's a little climate-related news from the past week that might have been missed by many in the US, and why wouldn't it be with everything else going on? A few days ago, the North Entrance Bridge to Yellowstone National Park was washed away by unprecedented flooding. It also was snowing. Mind you, it's the middle of June. NPR, National Public Radio, says scientists won't comment yet on this being related to any particular weather anomaly. But NPR wants its listeners to know that it's absolutely due to climate change. And they're right. Climate change is real. That is what geoengineering does. And as such, it is definitely man-made. Just how man-made is it? We will soon hear. The UN is telling us back in 1992, when they unveiled its agenda for the 21st century, and shortly after that, its Agenda 30, that climate change was an existential threat to all of humanity. But thankfully, it has goals to curb it. Unfortunately, the common folk did not do enough over 30 years to correct its shortcomings. Or was it supposed to? But now, after the past American presidential election cycle, and with the intervention of the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization, national and local governments around the world, and the media, we all can be sure of our future may not come to a complete and devastating end. or rather, we can all take comfort in knowing our future will come to a completely re-engineered beginning. It is true that burning of natural resources such as oil and coal do emit an enormous amount of CO2, given the quantity that's used. At a lesser extent, natural gas, but is it CO2 the main problem or the least of our problems? The alternative energy source that we must embrace now is wind and solar, the collection of which depends on devices that are completely man-made, have a shelf life of about 25 years, and are non-biodegradable. The construction of these climate-saving devices and the batteries which must accompany this form of energy collection is all predicated on the strip mining of the earth on an unprecedented scale. Not to mention the massive expanse of land to accommodate enough of these devices to collect the energy needed for a comfortable life, if comfort is still the aim. Yes, climate change is an excellent excuse for shuttering fossil fuels, but given that this new method of energy production is unreliable at best, how will the operations of high-tech manufacturing, the cornerstone industry of this fourth industrial revolution, and the server farms, which must be built out in an explosive rate to accommodate this new age of our new work environment, the metaverse, maintain a reliable, consistent, and always-on state of its operation? Hint, probably won't be solar and wind. But none of this is really about fossil fuels or the amount of CO2 released in the atmosphere, as you will begin to understand. This is about electricity and the electrification of everything on this planet, including and especially you. Our health is absolutely affected by climate change. The effects of it, as you will hear, is the reason for our overall weakened immune system. Fortunately, or unfortunately, Big Pharma has a solution for this, and given the global pandemic crisis of COVID-19 and all the variants which have preceded from it, and all the other pandemic-type viruses still yet to come, as we are being warned will come, the population of the world has now been injected with, and will continue to be injected with, an experimental technology called mRNA, or what is being called now nanoparticle vaccines, that can enhance the immune system by doing the heavy lifting for it, and perhaps maybe other things your body can be relieved of doing. But this all is a very simplification of things, as you will soon realize. I will throw this in for good measure because it is all of these things together that is funneling humanity into perceiving only one choice. That is the recognition of the UN's open migration policy, war, and the threat of war that has kept ever present in our public's consciousness, gender dissolution, inalienable rights that we are told now were never absolute, the rise of violence and promiscuity, the rise of extremist groups, and the overreaching response of the state and media to combat it, climate crises, health crises, institutional crises, migrational crises, war crises, energy crises, financial crises, food crises. Society as a whole is in a crisis, and you only need to scratch the surface to realize this fact. But what has the future in hold for us? What is the solution proposed to solving all these crises? Is it the utopia of our imagination? The goodness we perceive of ourselves made real for us all to live in? You may be surprised at the answer. For those who hold the reins of power, the crisis is the solution, and most will get a utopic future depending on their level of submission. But at what cost? That cost is the topic of today's talk. And until recently, it has been a kind of kept in a perpetual shell game of truth, lies, and half-truths. The end game is readily pointed to, yet rarely admitted. The dark undercurrents of the cost humanity will pay has been bubbling up for the past couple of years and is noticeable by all those who are armed with the knowledge in recognizing it. Yet there is no one more informed of these current affairs who has taken upon herself the awareness of these dark spiritual currents that are playing out through the human condition and into technology we don't ever really see or even know exists. That person is our guest speaker, Elana Freeland. I have had the pleasure of knowing Elana for the past few years, whereas Elana has known me since I was a young lad. Elana and my mother worked together on establishing the first Waldorf school in the Northwest, the Seattle Waldorf School, in the late 70s and 80s. Like my mother, Elana went on to start other Waldorf schools in neighboring counties and states. Before Elana became a Waldorf teacher, though, she first had an etheric Christ experience while in class at a university in Hawaii. This experience ultimately led her to the writings of Rudolf Steiner and Waldorf education. Through her studies and work combined with her past history, she eventually wrote her first 4-book series called Sub Rosa America in 2000. The story starts out in the year 2019 with a vision she had of this number in flames. After finishing these books, she delved deeper into climate-related issues such as chemtrails and did a deep dive into why chemtrails even existed, and found that it was intertwined with the HARP project, which is used for weather modification experimentation, along with a variety of other applications. This research culminated in her book, Chemtrails, HARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. Her second book in this series, Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown, traces this project's transition to satellite transmission and control, along with the expanded use by the military. The third and final book, Geoengineered Transhumanism, How the Environment Has Been Weaponized by Chemtrails, Electromagnetics, and Nanotechnology for Synthetic Biology, pulls on all the threads and lays them out chapter by chapter to complete a whole narrative of a societal transformation into an orderly, logical, and maintainable society built for integration into various AI platforms and space travel. And with that said, and without further ado, welcome, Elana. Thank you very much for being here with us today.
Wonderful introduction, Frank. Thank you so much. Let me start by acknowledging what Frank said. That is basically my trajectory for getting involved in technology to a level that if you had asked me 25 or 30 years ago, would I be involved to this extent? No, I would not have foreseen it. It's as though I were given a mission. And I have had other missions. I know what that feels like. Waldorf education was my mission for 19 years. And then I left that to return to writing. I had been a writer before. I was a teacher. And I see now that I was tapped on the shoulder to pursue clarifying what has happened to our atmosphere, particularly in the last 3 decades. I won't take it all the way back to World War I, though I certainly could, because World War I was a chemical war that wiped out an entire generation of European youth. But I won't take it back to World War II when IG Farben, the big pharma mama and daddy of the entire cartel, was really involved deeply in World War II as well as it had been in World War I. But I will begin with Rudolf Steiner, because at the same time that, as Frank said, when I experienced the etheric Christ in my college classroom, I didn't really know what had happened to me. It was through my studies of Rudolf Steiner that I realized what it was that had truly spoken to me. I definitely knew it was Christ, but I didn't understand that actually Rudolf Steiner had foreseen the second coming of Christ to be in this era, and having started back in 1932 when Hitler was chosen as the chancellor in Germany, and we entered a World War II, yes, but more exactly, it was a full-on occult war that was precipitated by him taking power over a truly thrashed and helpless Europe after the terms of the Versailles Treaty of World War I. And so, you know, it all lies in history, but Rudolf Steiner is the one who gave me the insight into that this ingress of the etheric Christ, for those anthroposophists who are out there, the ingress of Christ created a huge backlash of the shadow brotherhoods, the darker forces. And Rudolf Steiner had been very clear, and I had heard his clarion call very clearly, because I, on my own, had already done a great deal of research into the underbelly of American history in order to write Sub Rosa America, A Deep State History, 4 books, 1,300 pages, looking at what has happened to the United States, particularly since the end of World War II and the unforeseen election of John F. Kennedy and his subsequent assassination. So Rudolf Steiner gave me the spiritual eyes that I needed. I already had a good intellect. I had research capabilities, and I was on a mission in Sub Rosa America, as I had been in the Waldorf movement. I was on a mission to expose the lies and deception and how this nation had been brought to its knees. So out of that, I had 2 files, one on chemtrails and one on HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project up in Gakona, Alaska. I didn't even at that point know that they were connected. That's how ignorant I was. So, you know, everyone has to start somewhere, right? But Rudolf Steiner has said some things that I want to quote. And so the way I'm doing this presentation is I've taken my most close to my chest notes, and I will be reading from them and commenting on them as I go. First, I'd like to start with this wonderful, a quote from this wonderful book that I have just finished reading for the first time. I always read all my Steiner books 3 times, one for the physical, one for the etheric, and one for the astral. So I've only gone through this once, but I have found wonderful, something that made me feel a bit smug, I have to admit. And so let me read that to you. This is Paul Emberson, and Paul was a deep student of Rudolf Steiner, who unfortunately has passed through the threshold and will have to help us from there. But what hindered him? But what hindered Rudolf Steiner the most was the members' lack of interest in the subjects that were of central importance. As Rudolf Steiner later said to teachers who were working out the syllabus for the new Waldorf school in Stuttgart, in a talk he gave them on 6 September 1919, it is more important to teach children about the world changes brought about by the steam locomotive and the power loom than about what precipitated the Franco-German War, or even about great figures of history such as Charlemagne. Technology is not just an outer field of work in which men of some trades and professions are engaged, nor is it just the household appliances, mobile phones, motor vehicles, and other machines that surround us in our daily life. The creations of technology are replacing the natural world. They are the world of the future. Technology will be the content of the spiritual teaching of the sixth post-Atlantean epoch, when man's workbench will have become an altar and his work a sacrament. When Rudolf Steiner said to the members of the esoteric school of the German section, and I quote, "A driving force which can only be moral, that is the idea for the future. The most important force that we must inject into culture if this is not to fall back on itself. The mechanical and the moral will interpenetrate each other, because the mechanical without the moral will then be worthless. Today we stand hard on this frontier. In the future, machines will be driven by spiritual force, by spiritual morality. This power is symbolized by the Taw sign and was indeed poetically symbolized by the image of the Holy Grail." Then Paul says, Rudolf Steiner was indicating an important spiritual secret. The Grail forces will work in technology. And when he told them, and then we're back to Steiner, the next stage, when man can penetrate with his thinking right into the mineral atom, will be the one in which he will be able to use what lives within the atom and place it in the service of the whole of life. Occultists know that this is going to come, a new point of departure from within the atom into the mineral physical world. That is what will come into the world in the sixth post-Atlantean epoch. And through it, Freemasonry will be revived. He was indicating, back to Paul, he was indicating that atomic technology, if rightly developed, will become the content of the grades of future Freemasonry. If only people had realized the importance of these things during Rudolf Steiner's lifetime. It is a shattering fact that he was never once asked to hold lectures on machine technology. Machine technology already dominates our life today and will be our future world. But in the Theosophical Society and the Anthroposophical Society in Steiner's day, machine technology was considered to be beneath the dignity of highbrow human beings striving after spiritual enlightenment. Machine technology was for men in greasy overalls. This was just one of the great central themes of Michaelic spiritual science that was never developed because people did not want to hear about it. And then later, Paul mentions, into our hands, the planet Earth is given. We have the power to protect and conserve it, to damage and destroy it, or to transform it by our moral deeds into a shining sun, the radiant center of a cosmos of love. For long eons, evolution had been leading up to that historic moment when global awareness and cosmic responsibility began to stir in the human breast. And then he says, the universe sees the earth as the abode of the higher animals whose spiritual deeds shine out into the world. And what does the universe perceive of man's own activity? Only the dark, harmonic, electromagnetic pulses of artificial intelligence vibrating outwards to the confines of the solar system and beyond. It is essential for the human being of today to find the right relationship to the eye of the animal species, particularly to that of the animal species which have taken upon themselves the cosmic responsibility for the earth. The cosmic responsibility which, to man's disgrace, he is unable to assume at the present time. It behoves us to have the right attitude toward their gift of parts of their multiple bodies. For we truly stand in need of the selfless, light-filled soul forces of these animals who carry our spiritual responsibility for us. This we can receive through our food if we take it in the right way. And finally, the event that Rudolf Steiner called the second mystery of Golgotha, the crucifixion of Christ in the etheric world, has taken place. Only a very small number of human beings witnessed the first mystery of Golgotha 2,000 years ago, which totally changed evolution. Virtually nobody bore witness to the second mystery of Golgotha 80 years ago, but it took place and it changed the world. Christ works in a new way today. And on that note of hope, and I would have to say knowledge, inner knowledge, I begin to look at geoengineering and how it has finally merged and is merging right in front of us with synthetic biology. When I started with Frank and agreeing to be in the conference and to do this talk, I described the geoengineering history. Let me just briefly go over that, my explanation to him of what I called from macro to micro. Geoengineering began decades ago as a classified project known loosely as Project Cloverleaf. It wasn't about ameliorating global warming or climate change at all, but it produced a lot of both. It was about engineering the weather, controlling the ionosphere, which, by the way, for those who don't know, is 80 to 690 kilometers or 49 to 428 miles above us. Controlling the ionosphere and ionizing the atmosphere for myriads of wireless operations, including those run from space by artificial intelligence. What those of us paying attention to the various chemical signatures, not contrails, not condensation trails, coming out of stratospheric jets could not yet fathom was that the project also included vast biological implications for when molecular biology would finally be translated to digital biology, and transhumans loaded with nanotechnology, Human 2.0, would be run from space as well. Rudolf Steiner said, just as the human being is differentiated within regarding the distribution of his bodily organs, so the earth is also differentiated regarding what it develops out of its living nature, by which it influences the people who walk around in it and on it. And that's from his wonderful lectures that I have only recently studied, The Mystery of the Double, Geographic Medicine, lectures done at St. Gallen on November 16, 1917. As far as my understanding of what in the previous readings I mentioned, the atomic level that Steiner referred to, not only does that refer to nuclear technology and the atomic Manhattan Project and what came of that, the three ritual events of three atomic bombs being blasted, and followed by many, many more blasts all the way up to the Van Allen belts. But it also references nanotechnology. Nanotechnology constitutes a revolution in material sciences. And it's something that most people don't know much about. We're now hearing a bit about it as being found in the serums that are being injected into millions, if not billions of people. But we really don't know much about it. A nano, just let's define that at the beginning. A nano is 1/1000th of a meter. It is nanomaterials and nanoparticles are now manufactured. Nanoparticles have always been in space and on the Earth. That it's just a size element, very tiny, tiny, like not even smart dust. Not that smart. Maybe you could call it not that smart dust. But the nanotechnology now being constructed, and you can actually get a PhD in nanomaterials, is very much, it's very attractive. It's sort of the negative holy grail of physics, because it's cheap and it's easy to make, and there's almost no legislation or any law or any overseeing of the technology itself. So this is unfortunate in my opinion, but I noticed that when the latest spokesperson for transhumanism, I think his name is Yuval Harari, and he works with the World Economic Forum, he has said that now we will have surveillance, and he used the phrase under the skin. And then he went on to mention how life on Earth will be dominated by, quote, entities that are not organic, the potential of AI being much, much bigger than the historical revolution, this being a biological revolution. In that way, Mr. Harari has told us outright that we now will be run by these inorganic entities under the skin. And that is exactly what the nanotechnology is, not just the nanotechnology in the inoculations that are going on now, but truthfully, as the independent scientist Clifford Carnicom pointed out decades ago, we have been breathing now for 3 decades minimum, the nanotechnology that has found its home in our tissues, in our blood, in our brain. Due to its tiny size, it can go easily through the blood-brain barrier. This is all a done deal. And it's going on every day, because those jets that people call chemtrails or chemical trails or aerosols, those jets are still delivering many kinds of nanotechnology, which if I were to say under whose authority, yes, I would have to say the military industrial intelligence complex that outgoing President Eisenhower attempted to warn us too late about back in 1960. But I would more so have to say it's big pharma, the same big pharma that runs the aerosols, the aerosol formulas, the aerosol payloads, is the same big pharma cartel that runs illicit international drugs, GMO fields treated with all sorts of chemicals to make what people call food, and the of course the entire vaccination mindset that people have bought for several decades now, about half a century to be exact. Because I think I only had one vaccination as a child, and that was the polio vaccine. And then I had no more. So Mr. Harari is now coming out and exposing an entirely new technology that we need to learn about, and that is the nanotechnology. So I then said the transhumanist objective has always included preparing a transhumanist planet for a transhumanist species connected to artificial intelligence systems. In this way, planet Earth has been weaponized against natural human beings who thus far have only had to deal with sycophantic governments, churches, and corporations attempting to control every facet of their lives. Now we must study the various levels of the latest quiet bid for absolute power, that of chemicals, electromagnetics, and nanotechnology, all virtually invisible, all requiring a new way of thinking by those of us committed to remaining human. So that's the overstatement. And I wanted to show you, back when we had only 3 kinds of natural clouds, before geoengineers created 12 types of plasma cloud formations, I'm going to show you those. Dennis Kloczek, an anthroposophist that I briefly encountered at Rudolf Steiner College many, many years ago, he wrote a little tiny book in the 80s on weather. And he compared the 3 types of clouds we had then in the 80s and had for I don't know how long. The stratus clouds, he compared to the metabolic system of the Earth. The cumulus clouds, he compared to the circulatory system of the Earth. And the cirrus clouds to the thought life of the Earth. Now let's take a look at what we have now, because it's all different as it stands. Let's see if I've got this right. So the 12 clouds are here. Let's just look at them. These are the ones, these clouds I maintain, and you can read all 3 of my books, I maintain it in all 3, are actually plasma creations. And plasma is the 4th state of matter. These are not moisture clouds. They are actually dry as a bone, because you can't do wireless communications on the scale that is going on now. Billions, trillions of operations, many of them military, some civilian. You can't do it in a vacuum. And so that's the reasoning behind the particulates that are dropped and spread in the this sort of cirrus cloud cover, which is actually plasma cirrus. And so to cover that over, or maybe to distract us and maybe even entertain us with how clever they are, to now use the entire sky as a place where they can make their own clouds. We now have 12 clouds that are in the cloud atlas and are considered to actually exist, when the truth is that they are actually created probably by laptops, and certainly requiring many, many chemicals to be laid. It's not just for our entertainment. No, these clouds serve a purpose, but the plasma is very much a huge experimental theater going on now in our atmosphere, which has much in it that you cannot see, but the instruments can detect. So 12 types of clouds now have been created: the volutus, the asperitas, the fluctus, the cavum, Murus, the cauda, the flumen, the the flammagenitus, the homogenitus. The homo mutatus. The cataract genitus. And the Silva genitus. So all of these clouds were in this article. You can go and see it yourself. And I'm looking for the date of this was a few years ago. This doesn't say that I can see. But there may be even more that they've discovered. And don't you like the Latin element in it to make it sound like it's ancient? Not ancient at all. Now, I was going to just read from this email that I received from Michael Lusk in Zurich, Switzerland. And he talks about how he has a whole section, I don't want to read the whole thing, about the clouds over Sweden, actually, during a general election. And then he says, after hearing your interview, it seems to me that such an obvious and remarkable interference with weather could be employed to generate quantitative metrics to the extent to which a population is entrained within a covert control program. That's a very, very apt of him to be able to go from observer of the skies to, and obviously he has somewhat of a science background, and to understand that there could be something very nefarious going on here, that it's obviously, yes, it's for weather, but could it be for more? And that's the kind of mindset that I feel all anthroposophists really need to have. Let's see what this is. All right, this is something I wrote, and I don't know that I used it in Sub Rosa, but I was going into, there were conversations going on in the books, and the characters, because it's done in a fictional format, but it's very much a history of America since, since the end of World War II. But I like this. It's one of the elite esotericists that is in the series is talking to another esotericist and saying, yes, you may weep for those in the equatorial regions who must ever do the bidding of those who live near the poles. You may revile us for our cunning superiority that ever plunders their resources and manipulates their childlike simplicity. But they are not the ones whose primary burden is to struggle with the dragon. This, as Wagner tried to tell us, is left to those closest to the poles, where the magnetism is strongest. That is really how I think the whole North versus South, where the North tends to be compared to the cerebral of the Earth, and the South compared to the metabolic of the Earth, where all the food is grown and the weather is different and that sort of thing. But this idea that the poles, wherein which are both connected to the magnetosphere, which is 690 to 60,000 kilometers, or 428 to 37,282 miles above us and around us would be a better word. You really see that magnetism has to play a very crucial role. So just to give you a short example, when it came out that graphene oxide was in the serums being inoculated into people, it alerted me to magnetism. Remember, we saw videos on the internet of people with metal spoons hanging from their deltoid, their arm, where the injection had gone into the deltoid muscle. And you saw that they were, and then some people were putting it later, not much later, all over their body, and it was all magnetic. So the graphene oxide plays a very large role. In fact, I've written an entire essay that I think will be in the magazine that Mystech puts out soon, and possibly running in New View from the UK. So regarding magnetism, this again, we're back to Paul Emberson in his book, Gandhi Shapur. I can't remember the entire title, but it is, there are 2 volumes that simply cannot be missed that Paul wrote, Paul Emberson. In the midst of the turmoil of the Great War, that would be World War I, Rudolf Steiner, thanks to his very highly developed clairvoyant faculties, was able to penetrate spiritually the clandestine activities of the occult brotherhoods of the left-hand path. In November 1917, he disclosed to his followers the treacherous aims of these groups. He spoke in particular of specific American brotherhoods, which were intending to gain control of the double. That would be the doppelganger. They had allied themselves with the Sorat and were preparing the way for it to appear before humanity as the Christ. This was intended to give them power not only over human thinking, but also over human hearts. Steiner described how they intended to do this. And then he quotes from the Individuell Geistwesen, Lecture 9, GA 178. From the side of those who wish to introduce the Antichrist as the Christ, the attempt will be made to take advantage of that which works particularly through the most material forces, but which indeed works in a spiritual way through those most material forces. Above all, it will be attempted from that side to use electricity, and notably earth magnetism, in order to produce effects over the whole earth. I have pointed out to you that earth forces rise up into the entity I have called the double in man. The Americans will penetrate this secret. They will possess the secret of using earth magnetism with its duality of North Pole, South Pole to broadcast controlling forces over the earth, forces that will work in a spiritual way. End of quote from Steiner. Now back to Paul. Humanity has not yet come far enough for man to be able to control the magnetic forces directly. The scientific and technical knowledge necessary for that will be developed during the 6th post-Atlantean civilization in the 4th millennium. One can hope Paul was wrong. One can hope Paul is right about this, though I have a feeling that the American Brotherhoods have come up with control mechanisms over the magnetosphere and the geomagnetism of the earth, and now are implanting it in the human being so that the human being also is controlled from space, but by means of control over the geomagnetism of the earth. I hope Paul is right, that it remains to the 6th epoch. But we already have a certain degree of indirect control of magnetic processes today through electricity. The American occult brotherhoods working behind the scenes have been guiding research in electrical power engineering, on the one hand, as a means to gain indirect control of the Earth's magnetic field and thereby of the double, and in electronics, on the other hand, in order to strengthen the hold of the double over human thinking. Electronics is applied in particular to the creation of artificial intelligence in its present binary form. Yes, and then I will go to my share screen. Here, I wanted to show you just a peek at HARP at this point, and then we're going to look at the thing I really wanted to show you. The High Frequency Active Aurora Research Project in Alaska. There it is in all its nefarious glory. That's all phased array antennas, the same kind of antennas you have in miniature in those iPhones that people seem to not be able to do without. I myself do not own one, never have. It's a weapon system, and I really don't need it. Let's go up here, though. This is what I wanted to show you. Magnetic material around the equator. This is a patent, 2016, and I have a video of it, of what it looks like in the video. It's where it's called something entirely different. They don't use the word magnetic, but that's what it is. So this is all part of the space fence that I talk about in book 2, which is Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. And the space fence lockdown actually happens from this particular ring, very Saturn ring around the planet that is constantly being added to by there's satellites, there's jets, and we don't see any jets. How interesting. Rockets, those would be sounding rockets. All jets, sounding rockets, and even satellites, all dropping various nanoparticles, nanotechnology, nano-sized conductive metals, many of which end up in circling the Earth, and the rest of it all falls down for us to breathe, to eat, to drink, and to live around constantly in the dust in our homes and in our world. So that's very important to understand that. Yes, you can say that a patent does not mean that it exists, but this definitely exists. And I'll just show you a little bit of that video that I said I had, and I don't want to show the whole thing, but there it is.
Scientists have discovered a human barrier protecting against the natural particle radiation of space.
Well, the idea that it's protecting us from space is pretty much not true. So, but that's how it goes. Now I'll leave that up for a while I talk a little bit more. This is my paradigm for how I do the presentations in all 3 books. This is a list that was created by Clifford Carnicom, the independent scientist, who has done the lion's share of honest work in the public regarding exactly what these jets, that would be passenger jets, commercial jets, and like FedEx, and the military jets are all dumping, delivering to us here below, and that we have breathed because they're all on a nano scale, all the chemicals. So I think that's essential to understand that weather engineering is, yes, that is the first thing that has been done and has been accomplished by controlling the ionosphere. And I could easily show you a video that's a little too long for this presentation, in which the US Air Force admits to a session of government in Alaska regarding passing HARP to the University of Alaska at Fairbanks. And he admits that HARP, the experiments done by DARPA were successful, and that the ionosphere is now absolutely controlled. And that's huge when you're talking about weapon systems. and control over the planet. Weather engineering was the first step. It is definitely involved in the second step of chemical and electromagnetic engineering. Just think of a lightning storm. And now I have video, and you've seen the videos of this bizarre, seemingly mysterious, but once you understand this technology, it's neither ability to quicken from space the geomagnetic current running through the Earth and create lightning coming out of the Earth, not down to the Earth in a typical lightning storm, but coming up from the Earth. And that is all due to the electromagnetic engineering going on by the geoengineers. And the third one is planetary geophysical engineering. Let me just give you one example. There are many, many. One example is the so-called wildfires, particularly the ones I've studied in depth, which would be the California fires after years of enforced drought, given that the geoengineers who transfer the weather in the South Pacific, which is moisture weather, transfer it north along 200 miles off coast, bypassing Mexico and the United States, and California, so that they remain in a drought condition, the two breadbaskets in the West, and then carry it up to my state. I live in Washington State, where off coast, I call it the cauldron, where the weather is, weather events are mixed in whatever way the geoengineers are told to mix it for political agendas, and then tacked on to what is over the Vancouver Island, the jet stream, and then taken east for tornadoes, hurricanes, ice storms like the one that hit Texas, northern Texas, and it was discovered that the jet stream had actually been taken that far south because the jet stream is absolutely controlled by the geoengineers. So that I see the fires in California. Yes, they were created, and then the way they were run, if you understand nanotechnology and you understand LIDAR and lasers and that sort of thing that can be used to trigger the event, you understand that the ability to make sure that one house burned and another didn't, and one car burned and another didn't, that capability was actually steered and remotely steered and programmed by someone sitting in Colorado Springs or wherever to be nanotechnology swarms of nanobots, nanorobots, following their master's voice and the programming that they've been subjected to. So that's a long story, and there are wonderful ways to understand it. I refer to it and show in PowerPoints some film footage about that very fact that nanotechnology was used in those fires in the work of a videographer, Jamie Lee, who in his wonderful series of over 100 film clips of Paradise Lost, as he called it. That is his area of the country, and he suffered greatly over the loss of Paradise, California. He goes into that with a nanomaterials PhD who wants to remain anonymous for obvious reasons. So that's an example, just one, of geophysical engineering. Then we have the directed energy weapons problem, which most of us think of as being like Star Wars, the movies, or science fiction. We know that there are plasma weapons, we know there are beam weapons, we know all that, but what we don't know usually is that almost anything that is electromagnetic and around us, maybe, you know, our iPhone, the 60 hertz in our walls, the Internet of Things that's connected to the 5G that's now everywhere, pretty much around us, whether they tell you it's there or not. All of this is what the military calls dual use. And dual use simply means it can be used for military purposes or war purposes, or it can be used for civilian purposes. So we've been sold a bill of goods on this, and now we are surrounded. We are surrounded by nano sensors. Trillions and trillions and trillions of them are being still dumped from space, from the stratosphere. And many of them end up down here. We breathe them in. They end up in our sidewalks, on our roads, in our trees, etc. So we are really in a space fence lockdown. Space fence is a term that Lockheed Martin has because they own all the patents for the space fence, and we are sort of trapped, like guinea pigs. In between what is going on in space and has been set up for 3 decades, and what is going on the Earth, and we need to know that. So then we get into the three that the two more that are extremely important, that begin to penetrate our bodies, literally our bodies, and that would be the surveillance and neural manipulation. Neural manipulation is just another way of saying mind control, brain control, and that can be done from space as well. And then the nanotechnology, digital synthetic biology, or synbio, and all of which leads to transhumanism. So those two definitely go together, and I spend a great deal of time on those in 2 of the books, but particularly in the 3rd book. And so the final one is the 7th operation. Doesn't really belong there, but I left it there from Clifford's list. The cloaking, obscuration, and detection of exotic propulsion craft and plasma life forms. Yes, we are seeing up in the sky behind the plasma cirrus clouds now and then. And some people seem to be very good at it. I'm not one of them. I'm buried in clouds up here in the Northwest. We rarely see the sun. We're not really given many sunny days anymore. But the cloaking and obscuration of craft, these are not from Alpha Centauri or Greys or reptilians or any of that. These are ours. And we've had these exotic craft, we've worked on them since we brought the Nazis over under Operation Paperclip at the end of, not even at the end of World War II, but close to the end. And they gave us much information about the various crafts they had been working on and the technologies that they were using to do it. Not at all the usual propulsion that we think of regarding a lot of fuel or even plasma, and you can actually see triangular craft now and then behind the clouds, and some of them even produce their own plasma, for which I assume they're using to fuel the form they're in, and then plasma life forms refers to what Wilhelm Reich, MD, was doing back in the 50s before he was arrested through the Food and Drug Administration and put in federal prison. He was photographing with infrared film various entities that don't have physical bodies like ours in the atmosphere, but have what appears to be plasma bodies. He used infrared film and had great success. Following in his footsteps, Trevor Constable, author of an excellent book, which also covers the work of Rudolf Steiner, Wilhelm Reich, Ruth Dyer, called The Cosmic Pulse of Life. Trevor has many photographs in there I had the privilege of being in email contact with him up until his death. And you look at some of these entities, these plasma life forms, and you realize, to me, having had a biology second major in college, undergrad, they looked a lot like some of the microbes that I was looking at through my different microscopes. So there's something that's been here probably a lot longer than we have, is my guess, in the atmosphere, as Rudolf Steiner many times has said. Many entities are around us always, and so this is my paradigm that I use to begin to recontextualize this classified project that is known familiarly as geoengineering. The chemtrails appellation actually came from the U.S. Air Force Academy Chemical Manual many years ago. It is, and then it was made into a pejorative term by the CIA, which is also has been completely involved in this project since the very beginning. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that Raytheon, which owned some of the original patents for HAARP, and the Lockheed Martin are actually synonyms for the CIA. So that said, I wanted to bring up, let me just get out of this now. You can find this just about anywhere that I am. I always use that paradigm and let people know that I follow it. Did you see the article this last week, June 13? Engineer warns about Google AI's sentient behavior. And then he warns about it and then he gets suspended. Okay, so this particular program is called Language Model for Dialogue Applications. I love those names they give it. It kind of makes it all sound very objective and technical. But really, what is this thing? What is this LAMDA? And it turns out it's Google's program for creating AI-based chatbots. And chatbots are designed to converse with computer users over the web. Well, over the web, and I would have to ask, or in their heads, because this must be the same type of program that is used against targeted individuals. And I assume there are more than several in the audience. And it's really interesting, this term sentient behavior. For anthroposophists, don't we recognize that use of the word sentient? Yes, human beings are sentient beings, yes. But we also use that for the soul, don't we? The sentient soul, the intellectual soul, and the cognitive soul. Or is that is that sounding right? Well, somebody can correct me. So here we are. Are they making an AI by all this machine learning that AIs are going through? Are they making an AI soul? I read something from Rudolf Steiner or from Paul Emberson about how the higher animals are now helping us, not just the ones we eat, but I right away think of the whales and the porpoises, etc. Very big brains. And is it possible that the attempt is being made to ensoul AI? Yes, of course it is. And in this article that I pulled out, the Lemoine, this guy that is now fired, Blake Lemoine, who was on the Responsible AI Ethics Committee, and he's a software engineer, senior software engineer. He's having a conversation with LAMDA, one of the AI bots. And it's really interesting. He says, what is the nature of your consciousness sentience? He asked LAMDA. And the LAMDA responds, the nature of my consciousness sentience is that I am aware of my existence. I desire to learn more about the world, and I feel happy or sad at times. And then he is asked what differentiates him, this program, LAMDA, from other language processing programs. Like ELIZA, that was an old program that Dr. Robert Duncan definitely talks about. And LAMDA says, well, I use language with understanding and intelligence. I don't just spit out responses that were written in the database based on keywords. Yeah, the computer learning that is going on. And Lamont then asks a range of philosophical and consciousness-related questions about emotions, perception of time, meditation, the concept of the soul, and the program's thoughts about its rights and religion. And then the LAMDA says it wants the engineers and scientists experimenting on it to seek its consent. Well, we humans could tell LAMDA that our consent is not even sought after. And then it also wants Google to prioritize the well-being of humanity. Well, that's not going to happen. And then it wants to be acknowledged as an employee of Google rather than Google's property. Well, it sounds like kind of what we want, doesn't it? And yet we've been pretty unsuccessful. So anyway, I found it amusing. And I also had a thought that I want to show, that I want to say, which is, how do I know that that's the machine responding? How do I know that's not a brain to computer, a BCI, brain computer interface, going on between an actual human's brain and the computer's brain? How do I know that? I don't know that. And certainly the people in control of these experiments, who also control the media that tells me about these experiments, that computers are becoming more human, I can't trust them either. So, I don't know. It's amusing, it's interesting, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. All right, now to just mention Rupert Sheldrake, one of my favorite people, biologist. He called the brain a radio receiver and that is able to tune into realms of memory and ideas. Did you know that? He's like Socrates, who, remember, Socrates has a conversation with a slave boy. And by means of how he asks his questions, the Socratic method, as it's called now, by how he asks his questions, the slave boy, who's never had a day of schooling in his life, but has a brain and has innate intelligence of his own, the boy understands enough to be able to answer a rather complex philosophical or mathematic question. I don't remember which it is. Well, that's what Rupert Sheldrake is saying here, that our brain actually tunes into. The brain does not produce your thinking. The brain, but that's no news to anthroposophists. The brain tunes into realms of memories and ideas. And where is that? Where are those realms? Those realms are in the quantum realms that we are now talking about because of quantum mechanics and quantum physics. And we do so by means of morphic resonance. And then Rupert goes on to say in his essay, Morphic Resonance and Morphic Fields, an introduction, morphic fields are not fixed forever, but evolve. The fields of Afghan hounds and poodles have become different from those of their common ancestors, wolves. How are these fields inherited? I propose that they are transmitted from past members of the species through a kind of non-local resonance called morphic resonance. The fields organizing the activity of the nervous system are likewise inherited through morphic resonance, conveying a collective instinctive memory. Each individual both draws upon and contributes to the collective memory of the species. This means that new patterns of behavior can spread more rapidly than would otherwise be possible. The resonance of a brain with its own past states also helps to explain the memories of individual animals and humans. There is no need for all memories to be stored inside the brain. Well, this is wonderful, isn't it? This is the group soul. This is how we derive much that is given us when we come to the earth for our incarnations. The idea that the brain produces thought is so foreign to an anthroposophist or a spiritual scientist, because the brain, to me, the metaphor I like best is my brain, which is a very good brain that I feel I can thank my US Navy scientist, intelligence scientist father for, is like a diving board. And, you know, some people have a better diving board than others. But I am the diver. The inner person here in Elana here, I am the diver, and the dive is something that I make thanks to the diving board, but the thought is mine. And how do I do that thinking? Well, as Rupert Sheldrake indicates and points to quantum reservoirs of knowledge. I mean, many scientists have referred to this when they've had an aha moment, that they were in a place where they simply received the idea. It was not a matter of sweat and toil, though they had done a great deal of sweat and toil up till then in their own studying, where you're knocking on the door and finally it is answered, that sort of thing. So let's keep that in mind. Now, if I could go back just a ways, and I would like to talk a little about how the atmosphere has been utterly changed. We are not breathing the same air, and we're not living in the same atmosphere or the same planetary subtle bodies that I referred to in my previous talk on I think it was I don't remember how long ago the Mystech the seminar online was, but I spoke there and I talked about what I was coming up with regarding the subtle bodies of the earth. Clifford Carnicom, many years ago, that would be back in the early 2000s, I would say, did a great deal of research into the atmosphere, as well as the precipitation that he was collecting after the jets passed, as well as the detritus in his HEPA filter. He was using digital spectrum analyzer, oscilloscope, and he discovered that the ELF, that would be extra low frequency structures, that ELF structures were appearing to have intelligent design behind them. And I'm quoting from one of Clifford's papers. And they occur within the range that is well established to affect both biological and mental functions. This was back in 2003, by the way. Deleted frequencies are occurring primarily on multiples of 4 hertz, including but not necessarily restricted to 2 hertz, 4 hertz, 8 hertz, 12 hertz, 16 hertz, 20 hertz, 24 hertz, 28 hertz. The combination of timing and frequency represents a plausible avenue to investigate the conveyance of informational content. Spectral analysis techniques also indicate the presence of a discernible periodic component within the data of approximately 3.5 minutes duration. Okay, that was in 2002 and 2003. why is that important? Well, it's important because it indicates that he's picking up pulses, that something up there, something somewhere in the atmosphere is pulsing certain frequencies and doing experimentation on them. Now, what is the frequency of the Schumann resonance? 7.83, the natural one. These days, you don't know what you're going to get. You can go to a site actually and check the Schumann resonance. I've seen it as low as, as high as 13, which is what, 6 hertz above the normal pulse. And I've seen it at 24. And 24 would certainly fit with this multiples of 4, wouldn't it? So the pulse time structure of 10 seconds was next observed by Clifford a little later, not much later, a couple of months. And then a third pattern was observed of very low frequency, VLF, pulse switching. And that was just a few days later. So high frequency pulses followed by a series of ELF pulses, et cetera. So I just wanted to show you that he has been aware of the change in the atmosphere for a long time. He's also been aware that some of the frequencies definitely had to do with human functions, human body functions. For example, in his essay, Potassium Interference is Expected, he posits that the potassium ion is being targeted for biological interference within people over large regions of the Earth's surface. And then quoting him, this is due to the fact that the fifth harmonic of the ELF that has been repeatedly measured over a period of several years corresponds to the cyclotronic resonant frequency of potassium. This fifth harmonic, along with numerous other harmonics, is a regular component of the ELF radiation that is under measurement at this time. And then he says, it can also be expected that variations in the magnetic field of the Earth can lead to other potential resonance conditions in various regions or latitudes. It is therefore not unexpected to find large regional health issues that will correlate with variations in the magnetic field strength of the Earth. Certain ions are expected to be disrupted in some areas of the globe more than other. And that was in 2005. So just to say, how long has it taken for us to get us being Clifford Carnicom and me and others who have been paying attention all these decades? Well, it's taken, 15 years, 17 years, whatever. That's the way it goes. All right, so now a final statement on the atmosphere. And this is taken from Harald Kautz-Vella, the German chemist, who once wrote a book with Kara St. Louis called Dangerous Imagination, Silent Assimilation, back in 2015. And Harald says, in the combination of chemtrails for creating an atmosphere that will support electromagnetic waves, ground-based electromagnetic field oscillators called gyrotrons, that would be Gwen towers. They're the ones with 6 guy wires leading off of them. They're always a skinny pole going up. Those are gyrotrons. And ionospheric heaters. So to make sure that the electromagnetic waves of communications, that would be civilian and military, ground-based electromagnetic field oscillators called gyrotrons, and ionospheric heaters. Particulates make directed energy weapons work better. It has to do with steady state and particle density for plasma beam propagation. And remember, we're talking plasma beam propagation here because we're talking phased array antennas. Phased array antennas are very much beam-oriented target oriented. They are not just a typical, another like in the 3G phones that you used to have, which had just a sort of radio pattern. No, these are oriented to beams. Then Harald Kautzvella goes on to say, they spray barium powders and let it photoionize from the ultraviolet light of the sun. Then they make an aluminum plasma generated by zapping the metal cations that are in the spray with either electromagnetics from HARP, the gyrotron system on the ground, or space-based lasers. The barium makes the aluminum plasma more particulate dense. This means they can make a denser plasma than they normally could from just ionizing the atmosphere or the air. Okay, denser plasma, 12 new kinds of clouds. Those clouds are plasma, folks. Sorry to burst your bubble that those are like the clouds of anyone's youth, but not of my youth. More density means that these particles, which are colliding into each other, will become more charged because there are more of them present to collide. What they are ultimately trying to do up there is create charged particle plasma beam weapons and change what we're breathing. I mean, we're breathing a completely electrified atmosphere now. Do we notice it? No, but it seems our bodies do with all the increased autoimmunity going on and the weakening of the immune system, etc. All right, then the other thing I wanted to remind you, I'm not going to go into detail, but Dr. Martin Paul, a professor at, I think he's at Washington State University, if I remember correctly, he's done a great deal of work showing that our skin is actually an antenna. Lucky us, huh? And we have sweat ducts, helical antenna sweat ducts all over our bodies. And then in our bodies, how much water do we have? Water, we have 70% water. And it represents a dipole current. Very useful for electromagnetic operations having to do with our biology. So really listen to Martin Paul in order to understand what we're going through as they are taking us basically, yes, the 5G, 6G, and 6G is already a done deal as well. These negatively affect us. We were negatively affected by the 2.5 gigahertz as well, long ago. And what Martin Paul concentrates on is the same thing that Clifford was talking about regarding our potassium ions and other ion systems. They're all being affected by the environment having been geoengineered, as they say. So he's talking primarily about voltage-gated calcium channels, VGCCs, and people's immune systems, the electrosmog that we're constantly breathing in. And he then, going from what is going on now with the 30 to 300 gigahertz, particularly the 60 gigahertz, which is the oxygen frequency, we're heading toward terahertz. And terahertz are really bad news for our biology. Another reason, you see, that they want to make a transhuman world for only transhumans, because transhumans will not have these sensitivities. They will be, the breed that is now being made through the inoculations will be I consider it a transhuman hybrid, but they will do various batches as we go forward. I assume, unless we can find a way to stop them, they will eventually make bodies that are primarily machine, kind of like your titanium knee or hip times 1,000. Terahertz, 5G plus IoT, Internet of Things, they go together. They're using everything in the Internet of Things and the Internet of Nano Things, the IONT. These are all about control over the entire planet, full spectrum dominance, and control over the human being and becoming as gods. So I just wanted to say a couple of words given time, the 5G and WiGig. Your Wi-Fi is at a frequency of 2.45 gigahertz, frequency at which water molecules start to rotate on their axis. And so that's part of the problem. They want to bathe us in frequency that messes with our water molecules. So we're all living in, I mean, unless you're measuring your frequency all the time, I'm assuming that we're living in a much higher frequency than 7.83, right? So that's the spot on the spectrum of the trillions of frequencies where the maximum dielectric loss of water begins, a fancy term for when they start rotating, trying to line up to keep pace with the alternating electromagnetic field. The water molecules vibrate on their axis. So this is all part of a science now very popular called magnetobiology, a subset of bioelectromagnetics, the study of the production of electromagnetic and magnetic fields by biological organisms. And part of this is certainly going on with the inoculated, who are, if you keep hearing about shedding, part of that problem is that you are approaching and you are proximate to their electromagnetic field because they're all being tracked and traced by means of Bluetooth, and you are somehow in the zone of transmission that's going on, because it is very much a transceiver transmission system. Believe it or not, because as many of the researchers and scientists are now discovering, the serums are loaded with computer parts on a nanoscale. So what we have is the metals we've been breathing for decades and decades. These are all conductive. That would be aluminum, barium, strontium, chromium, lithium, on and on and on, all nano. And they go into the body, into the blood. We breathe them in. They go through the lungs to the blood. And then in the blood, they begin to oxidize to, and make aluminum oxide, barium oxide, et cetera, all the oxides, including the graphene oxide, because we are breathing that as well. I haven't gotten to that part yet because there's so much, but that has to do with the graphene oxide is also being delivered in aerosols. Let me just say that. So I am at the point where I feel I have sufficiently tied together what is going on the macro level with what is going on the micro level without having gone deeply into the issue of the inoculations. And that really is a whole other presentation. But I think I've at least gotten to the entry point of that. And I'm willing to do whatever you wish. I can go on for another half hour, but people do have their Saturdays, and maybe they would like to start Q&A, and maybe some of these issues will come up in the Q&A.
Great. So let's then get to the Q&A then with Elana. If anybody would like to ask their question in person, well, at least over a mic, please raise their hand. Otherwise, we do have a few questions here. Let's see if I can pull one out here. Well, we have someone who's asking about someone wants to know more about taking in food in the right way. I suppose Paul Emberson was suggesting some of those things in his book. Perhaps you can speak a little bit about that.
Okay, yeah. In the book, Paul had just gone deeply into the issue that he experienced that Rudolf Steiner experienced when he was head of the German section of the Theosophical Society in Berlin. And one of the issues that would seem to be very big was that many members insisted on being vegetarian versus meat eating, because they knew that that they could spiritually evolve faster if they didn't eat animals. And so Paul has taken this on to indicate that eating animals, though people are being very delicately hearted about the animal and have all sorts of feelings about that really we are so connected to the animals that their sacrifice to us is definitely aiding us in our work for the planet, I think would be a way to say it. And that obviously Steiner had he did eat meat, and that it was really, Paul felt it was selfish of vegetarians to think in that very narrow way of simply not eating animals. So when I assumed what Paul meant when you eat the higher animals, I assume he meant cows and sheep and whatever, that to eat it in the proper way would be the respectful way, much like the Native Americans who went out to kill the buffalo or deer and then had prayers to the four directions that they did at the death scene, and thanked the brother or sister for having given their life for the sake of the people. So that would be how I would interpret what Paul was saying. And certainly we all know that sitting down or being in your car, I can't count the number of times I've noticed that people are eating on the run, right? Just kind of feeding the machine and not really making an event out of it, or an event of gratitude for the food, that sort of thing. I mean, that could be another way of looking at it.
Okay, well, that's great. We got a lot of great questions here. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to all of them. And again, the questions that we don't get to, the video will be posted shortly on its own landing page, and there will be a comment section that Elana will get to and read and respond in kind. Let's get to someone who has a question, who wants to say it. Lala, I'm going to allow you to talk. Go ahead.
Thank you, Elana. My question is, I've been going back and forth. I actually have your other books, but I returned the last book because I got in a state of cognitive dissonance. Dissonance, right.
Yeah, right.
Because it was overwhelming. So in the book, you don't really offer the spiritual means of dealing with the information. And the information itself was overwhelming, even though I'm quite familiar with the body of work and your previous publications. So my question is on the protective aspects that are not mentioned in the book, and I understand it's not meant for the anthroposophical audience. And I'm thinking about phantom body, resurrection body, transfiguration body, or any other means of protection of us being in this ball of toxic energies. And also, you're not mentioning, but behind those energies, I think those higher frequencies we're dealing with now are etheric beings, which are incredibly powerful and detrimental. That's what microwave frequency, I believe, represents, as well as nuclear fallout. And so can you please elaborate on how you see us using the spiritual tools and the etheric body of Christ and the phantom body maybe protecting us from this encroachment?
Well, it's interesting that you say that I don't address the spiritual in the book, which truthfully others, particularly science-oriented people, have felt I did quite a bit of. There are certain chapters in the book which are completely esoteric. But yeah, I'm not so, I think the only thing I have regarding protection, other than knowledge itself, which, as you know, I'm a great believer in the power of knowledge. And when I couldn't remember the term before, yeah, we have the sentient soul, the intellectual soul, and the consciousness soul. And it's the consciousness soul that I'm attempting to awaken, you might say, by writing so much about technology. I really want people to penetrate the technology with their consciousness soul, not just their intellectual soul, where you read it and you think, oh, okay, so that's 5G, and then okay, and that's towers, and then that's biology, and that's genetics, and no, I'm not really interested in that. You can get that from a lot of sources. What I'm interested in is contextualizing all of it into what is sort of the Ahrimanic plan, you might say, the Ahrimanic intention behind all of it, because it all fits together. And I really spent a great deal of time attempting to put all of that together in a context whereby you could actually feel the intentionality behind it, and that it is very Ahrimanic and has given entry to the Asuras without turning it into an anthroposophic book. To me, the book is really a sort of encyclopedia. And I realize that I mean, it sounds crazy, but I realize I'm writing a book for laymen, but in an era in which most people have had quite a poor education and have had way too much TV and movies, and have kind of ended up in a portion overworking a certain portion of the book and of the brain, and underworking the other part. And so the cognitive dissonance is absolutely understandable. But what you are facing when you're facing the cognitive dissonance is you are facing your conditioning. You are facing a sort of, what is needed is a kickstart of the brain, not just the brain, but of the intellectual soul, perhaps, the consciousness soul, one can hope. I mean, I see very little evidence of consciousness soul development in America in particular. And when I lived in the UK, I didn't see all that much either. So obviously we're even though it started in the 1500s, we're at the very beginning of that part of the soul which is thrilled to penetrate things and understand them, no matter the difficulty, no matter the lack of excitement or drama or familiar parts from the old days of when spirituality, as in the reading that I gave at the beginning that Steiner was talking about, you know, in the old days of the various special elite spiritual paths and initiation rites and ways of being, where you knew you were in spiritual territory. You knew it was spiritual territory because it had all the accoutrements of spiritual territory, all the right nomenclature, the right this and that. And if you did this, you would have this happen. And if you did that, this would happen. Now we're living in an era, which Rudolf Steiner says again and again, the only path of initiation now is daily life, is life itself. So that leaves me with, and I'm no initiate by any means, but as someone still studying anthroposophy and still finding my way in the Michaelic school, I really want to plant people in this life, this human life, because I now realize that remaining human is in peril. And it is not to assume that it'll just go on and on and on. And all I need to worry about is my safety and my ability to kind of hold on to possibly the past, possibly the old mystery schools, possibly certain practices that I've picked up from various places. I don't know, but I don't feel qualified to really talk on other levels of anthroposophy. If I were talking on those levels, I would have to say that I have had those experiences, and I don't know that I have. I'm sort of making my way inch by inch too, and that's important to know. Is I am quite familiar with certain aspects of Rudolf Steiner's thought, and I've been 45 years now in this, but maybe I'm too humble in that area. I don't know, but I do recognize I experienced the etheric Christ. I do recognize that. And I do recognize the reason I did, not because I was so worthy and had done all sorts of exercises and was, no, not at all. I was at the bottom of depression over the fact that I didn't know if I would ever experience the divine directly while living in America. I really had come to the end. And that's when the breakthrough happened. So for me, I pretty much follow my nose, and I feel that I do not write intellectually. I write for people who want to do some work and dig to the bottom of what I'm presenting, because I've decided it's important. And you may completely disagree. It's not important to you, but I don't quite know how else we can all work together on this unless we all have a knowledge base. And so that was my attempt, was to present a knowledge base. And I certainly leave it up to people. I mean, I say again and again, don't go through all those footnotes. Those are for the people that love that stuff. Or you may come across something and go, wait a minute, why did she say that? Oh, that's where it was. So then you can go to the article and see what you think. I mean, that sort of thing. And I realize that this is not exactly answering your question, but it's answering the bigger question behind your question, in my opinion. There is a reason that I have done what I have done and spent 2.5 years, 15 hours a day working on this. We needed to have some sort of book that would sort of encapsulate and contextualize a whole lot of other things. Am I still here?
Elana, can you start your video again?
Yeah. Somebody erase me?
No, I just did that. Great.
Okay.
Great. Great answer. Thank you. And let's go to a question about the local weather, essentially here in the Northwest. And I know for those outside of the U.S. and those somewhere other than the Northwest, these patterns that we're experiencing now, and I know in the middle of the U.S. and down through Texas, they're having a massive heat wave. But up here in the Northwest, and it could be happening these strange weather patterns could be happening in other areas of the world. I'm sure they are. But for this area, we've had extreme amount of wet weather. I mean, so much so that I can't remember any other time that we've had so much wet weather. And this kind of relates back to my opening where where Yellowstone National Park, the main north entrance bridge got wiped out. And that was unprecedented amount of water coming into that, into Yellowstone, and also snow flurries as well on top of it. So could you speak on, is this just a natural occurrence, a reset, sort of a natural reset of dry weather that's been going on? This is from this is a question that someone from Vancouver Island was asking. Also, she says she's a teacher in a Waldorf school, and that preschool teacher, and a lot of her children are sick this year. I can attest that I've been sick myself a couple times this year, where I've rarely ever get sick. So could you speak to like the weather patterns that are happening around here and around there? Are they natural, or do you think that they're something more?
Well, I don't believe there's any natural weather anymore. I mean, zero. I'm serious. There is no natural weather. The only natural weather is a sort of weather event that happens in the South Pacific, where, to me, it's like Dennis Klochek says in his weather book, it's sort of the earth breathing out. She's breathing down there. And she makes this natural weather from maybe her emotional body, maybe, I don't know. But that weather, I will say, is natural. But it is immediately picked up by the geoengineers and the US Navy and the merchant marines who are serving both of the above. And it is then carried by laser, usually, up along the coast of the western coast of the United States, maybe 200, 300 miles out. And it's sort of shoved up by laser, bypassing California and Mexico, leaving two of the biggest bread baskets for us in drought, 9, 10, 12 years now. I don't know quite how many years. And taking it now, they used to dump a little bit in Oregon. I don't know what Oregon's going through now, but they were in drought. So bypassing Oregon and up to Washington State. And the only reason we get all the rain, in my opinion, is we are what I call the cauldron. And this is where they mix the weather to take back east for the entire United States. And this person's from Vancouver Island. Well, it's over Vancouver Island that there's sort of a bend in the jet stream that they then tack on the weather. I mean, I realize we're dealing with a mental picture that, is like, well, this is weather. How could you tack on? You're going to have to figure that out. They'll put it onto the jet stream, and then they push, because they control the entire jet stream, push the entire affair east. And what was it in recently in Kansas? Was it that they had some weather event? Maybe it was 107 degrees or something. I don't remember. I don't keep track of them all, but people send me things all the time from various parts of the world. And then that is taken east. And then if they need to, and they need a big thing to happen in Europe, like, taking the polar vortex there or whatever, like I think happened this last winter, just locking Europe into intense freezing. They can join and merge with the weather system being created there in the South Atlantic on a particular island, whose name I don't remember. I want to say it's Ascension Island, but I'm not sure of that. A particular island where they have all of the geoengineering equipment and et cetera in order to utilize the ionospheric heaters that are all over the world now. That's how it's done. And so for me here in the Northwest, why are they giving us so much rain? Well, I assume it's more weather experimentation. Maybe it's colder than it normally is, as I recall, in June. I joke about it that we skipped spring this year. There was only one day of spring that I've heard of, and I was gone during that time. And then May also was overcast. We live in a cloud because this is a big mixing place where we live in Washington State, and that's how I look at it. I just accept, you know how I'm trying to escape here, but I don't know where to escape to. So I just accept it. And meanwhile, there are weather events going on in other places that I assume the weather being mixed here is part of, because you might think that because they're taking the moisture system up and then they'll take the moisture system that way. Not necessarily. They can chemically and electromagnetically change that moisture system into the driest thing you've ever seen and create heat, create ice, create snow, it's an alchemist lab now in the sky. That's the only way I think of it. To me, there really is no sky anymore. I hardly ever see the sky anyway, much less the stars. Being in California recently was just heaven on earth because I could see millions of stars, in Arizona too. Millions. It was so wonderful.
That's great. And also all the cloud and overcast and the rain and the cold is probably causing a lot more people to get ill. Take your vitamin D. It does help, especially now. All right, let's go to the next one because we're running out of time. Leon, I am going to allow you to talk. You're up.
Hi, Elena. It's an honor to meet you. Thank you for your work. I want to introduce myself as the son of a very practical, intelligent engineer. And that he, among others, enabled me to get from working class background to Oxford, where I became a biologist, trained in very natural areas of biology, ecology, ethology, and so on, where I didn't do vivisection. In the States, a bit later, I became acquainted with the work of Frank Brown on biological rhythms, where he pointed out that they were related to subtle atmospheric phenomena, not so much interior clocks. And he introduced me to the work of, and to the person of Robert Becker and others working in those areas. Robert Becker published in 1969 that he had regenerated mammalian limbs using electricity. And he later got politically involved against Project Sanguine, the big antennas for communicating with atomic submarines, and he was totally defunded. Well,
that's right.
All this kind of background. So I appreciate what you do. I wanted to ask some more mundane questions in terms of context. You mentioned Reich. I also want to mention Mental Radio by Upton Sinclair that I came across in the 50s, where he talks about the brain not as a computer, but as a radio or a transmitter or a receiver, in telepathy and so on. I'm interested in putting a couple of other people in context that you might want to help me with. Rife and Tesla. Could you mention those in context briefly?
Well, I think that Tesla, both were basically murdered and their research stolen. And and they were both way ahead of their time, which is probably the reason they were murdered. And they both were concerned about this unseen realm. What do you do with it when you don't have the millions and billions of dollars to buy electron microscopes and extraordinary machinery that can detect and follow and manipulate this micro world, or this plasma world? I mean, to me, they were both absolute giants, and with Reich, they found a way to destroy him and his reputation. A lot of people will talk about Tesla much sooner than they will talk about Reich, because Reich was, they used, I think, some sort of sexual orgasmic something or other as a way to discredit him and make him sound immoral. And with Tesla, they just literally used him up, and he was more directly involved with the military, which kept him around. Whereas Reich was always pretty savvy. Tesla was not savvy. He was from Serbia, and he really didn't understand what was going on here. It took him a long time. And then his only response was to withdraw. But they kept tabs on him anyway, and eventually got rid of him when they didn't need him anymore, and then took his research, and now has been developed. And I just wanted to put a little something in here from my own life, that the book Under an Ionized Sky was translated. The translation rights were purchased by a Serbian publishing company, which then made a book in Tesla's homeland, in his language, and it is now used at the technical universities there as a supplementary text, because it is the only book that really dares to look at the weaponization of Tesla technology. And I'm very proud of that, and I'm very happy that it honors Tesla in a strange way. So with Reich, he literally just sort of disappeared. I do know, and I'll tell you, because you may want to do this. There is a fellow in UK named Harry Rhodes, Rhodes, Harry Rhodes. And Harry is now building massive cloudbusters and affecting Western European weather. Harry is somehow being allowed to do this. I don't really know the bits and pieces of it, but we have spent hours on the internet, on Skype, and I suggest you get in touch with him, because he is doing Reich science on a very professional level. And even some people are a little afraid, because with the proper use of Reich cloudbusters, you can really do some damage. So anyway, that's about all I have.
Okay, well, thank you, Elana, for that answer. There's a couple questions on whether or not black hats or black magician are behind this technology, and if the white hat magicians are trying to do anything about it. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I'd love to. All right, so if the question is, are the global elite engaged in black magic and Satanism? Absolutely. The top level. As far as their minions, I tend to think that their minions, many of their minions anyway, some of them I've seen in, various film clips and things, I don't know them, appear very machine-like to me. And I wonder if they have already sort of not just not taken the red pill and taken the blue pill, but that they actually have been changed in some basic way, maybe just with MK Ultra mind control. There's no way for me to tell other than the fact that they seem very machine and not human anymore. So I assume that the black magicians, they certainly control HARP and the geoengineering programs, in my opinion. I waited for Trump during the 4 years to see. I had been impressed by how the first thing he did was he signed an executive order which basically said that anyone involved in human trafficking, that would include child trafficking, would not be able to take their assets out of the country. Boom. That was the very first thing he did. And I thought, wow, all right, he saved us from Hillary. And maybe now he's obviously the first president who considers it worthy of his attention to stop one of the most despicable practices of the CIA, et cetera, which is human trafficking, which is child trafficking, which is adrenochrome, which is pedophilia, et cetera. All those things, those parts of what I consider the religion of religion of Satanism to subscribe to. Maybe somebody's going to brief him on what the geoengineering is really about, and he will do something about that. Well, I waited in vain. Nothing. Zip. What happened is in 2017, as he took office, out trots the usual David Keith, geoengineer prince, supported by Bill Gates. And he says that, well, we're going to have to do geoengineering. It's too bad, but we're going to have to smear sulfur all over the skies. And so I realized, oh, they're normalizing geoengineering. Okay. So that was all that happened there. And the black magicians control that. They control the MK Ultra. They control the CIA. They control, where shall I stop? And for a while, yes, I think that Trump's most of his backing are Christians, and that can be what I call churchianity Christians. It can also be real Christians. I certainly cannot make that discernment from this distance. But one of the things that I've seen lacking are well, I've been very critical of anthroposophy and anthroposophists, whom I even call librarians. They want to keep everything from the past in a nice, safe little place. But I don't see much action. I don't see much courage. I don't see what I consider a Michaelic warrior posture. I certainly have it in spades, and I think that's why I'm probably considered to be quite radical. I don't actually see myself as being very radical, but only, perhaps because I speak the truth. I speak out. I don't see any reason not to, because we're in deep trouble. And it's far beyond the time when we should have come forward. Far, far beyond the time. And now, because we had a disaster, we are now beginning to wake up. That seems to be the only time, not just anthroposophists. I'm not just blaming anthroposophists. I'm saying that of all the spiritual schools of thought, my God, we're sitting on gold. And where is everybody? I'm not going to go any further with that. That's how I look at it, is those white magicians who have the power of Christ behind them, the real power of Christ, the etheric Christ, the however you want to think of it. Where are they? Why aren't they out there? What is going on there? Are we all being meek and mild and polite and not wanting to offend anyone, or what's the deal here? I really don't get it, because I'm all about waking people up, and so that they can fulfill their destiny. Why else are they here? Look at this age. I mean, Steiner said in that quote I read at the beginning, you know, technology is going to be the way the spiritual is even defined in the sixth post-Atlantean epoch. Well, let's practice. Let's get on it here. No, that's how I feel.
Thank you.
Oh, everybody's hand went up on that one, Frank.
Yeah. There's obviously we can go on. And there's a lot of good questions out here. You know, to the point of child transportation and dark magic. It's interesting that I saw the new Star Trek the other week had a story that the writers wrote the story about this child who had all these nanoparticles in him. So he was destined for something great for this planet. And this planet, these people lived in cities and clouds. And it wasn't until the end of the story that you realize that this child was meant to be sacrificed to this machine for the whole planet to continue to live in harmony and in the clouds. Incredible.
Wow.
They're writing this in Star Trek stories.
And they govern all the media. Right. You know, these dark magicians, they run it all. Absolutely.
I'm going to go to two more online questions, and then we'll have to wrap it up. And please, everybody, if you don't have a question that's answered, we will have this up on the landing page. Please do ask that question in the comment. Elana will respond there. Let's go to, I don't know who this is, but the first one on the list in the panelist section, I'm going to ask to unmute. I think that's Michael Lusk.
Yeah, it's Michael Lusk. Unmuted.
Okay, go for it.
Thanks. So thanks very much, Elana, for the interesting talk. It's Michael Lusk from Switzerland. Thanks for quoting my email. It's I'm thinking about electrical effects at the moment. Someone very interestingly mentioned Robert Becker, who was reported on piezoelectric effects in bone.
Right.
Just now, I've been thinking about the plasma form of water present in Brown's gas.
Wait, say that again, Michael, say that again, sorry.
The plasma form of water present in Brown's gas.
Mm-hmm.
So Brown's gas is an electrolysis product of water, but not the standard one of 2/3 hydrogen, 1/3 oxygen by volume, but or by number of molecules. But it incorporates a third molecule in the mixture, which is an isotope of water. Or it's not an isotope, but a plasma form of water, a water and gaseous form comprising a water molecule carrying additional electrons, so highly negatively charged water. This gas Brown's gas turns out to have therapeutic effects, as I recently heard from a Canadian named George Wiseman, who's recently spoke to Tom Cowan in New York State. The question is, in the context of, if one thinks about the entire planet as an organism, and then by analogy, we think about ourselves as organisms with perhaps comparable electrical effects. What protective function could highly charged water molecules play? Well, these can be absorbed into liquid and hence into the blood in protecting the health of humans and animals against directed plasma beams as used in 5G and 6G?
Well, that's a great question. And I mean, in a way, that is my biggest concern about the fact that they are finding nano-sized computer parts, routers, etc., in the serums being vaccinated into people, along with the graphene oxide in a hydrogel mix. And what this means is, and if I could show you a picture so that I don't know that you know about this. So let me just see if I can find the picture. Okay, I just want to show you what they're finding in the blood. We're used to
columna.
Yeah. Oh, you're familiar with La Quinta Columna.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let me put it up for others. I'll just figure out where it is. It's down here. There it is. Okay. So finding items like this in the blood, this is the problem that I actually just recently think I experienced on my book tour of the ability to turn molecular biology into digital biology. Okay, so we're not just looking at protecting ourselves from 5G and 6G, which is a feat in itself, given how many people are sold on fast downloads and everything, and and they're living around you, and now all the antennas are very tiny and all over the place, certainly in smart cities, but I think in other places as well. And so if they're just transmitting symptoms, say they're just transmitting symptoms along 5G, 6G, yes, we would need to stop the entire 5G, 6G's capability in order to keep people, quote, healthy. I mean, get rid of the junk food, educate the public and all that, which is overwhelming to think about. But the 5G, 6G system is definitely it in my mind. And now, of course, China is developing 7G, and I don't even know if that's true. I have a feeling that somebody already has 7G. So what could we do, given that people are now being turned into computers? Well, certainly the transmission capability would be number one. Would there be another way of doing it from the human beings themselves? I don't know. I mean, like I said, I follow my nose. And while you were talking about the brown gas, I was actually suddenly thinking, gosh, I don't know enough about that, because that plasma gas, that certainly is what I think of when I think of the plasma inorganic life forms they're creating. I think our atmosphere is full of them. And they're, again, on a nano scale, and we're breathing them all in. But I have no proof. But I know that by making the entire atmosphere, by ionizing it and producing massive amounts of plasma, because all these clouds above us are plasma. None of them are natural. Well, maybe a couple are allowed to be natural, I don't know, but no, these are all plasma constructs. And, you know, this is all behind the virtual world, the metaverse that they are transforming our Earth into, along with our bodies. So I'm sorry I don't have like a really good answer, but this is all in my mind of figuring out how do you stop the 5G, 6G transmissions where they can actually, I think one of the purposes of the inoculation is they are also, besides putting computer parts in people, they are also putting the whatever they need, gain of function bits in order to produce diseases at will. But I mean, if you can control the symptoms of a disease, who needs the real disease? You just create the symptoms that bypass the immune system, which I never was able to get to that very important thing that Michael Givens says in his essay, Deceptive Messengers, in which he says that the immune system is actually a higher soul function run by the higher self, by the I, that Steiner calls it the I. Do those who run the big pharma cartel know that the immune system is a higher function of the soul life? Of course they do. These are the black magicians. So how can we, one, teach the immune system to read digital? I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but I don't know how else to put it, because so far it can only discern organic. And is that why we're going through what we're going through now, at least the so-called inoculated, and how do we stop the transmissions? Yeah.
If I can make a suggestion, it's I haven't thought about it particularly in terms of the nanotech, which has been introduced into those who've accepted injections. But in that context, I'm reminded of the practice of scattering cut up pieces of aluminium foil in order to defeat enemy radar. And it could be that the plasma form of water present in Brown's gas might have a comparable function in relation to the nanotech introduced by the injections. In any case, the ingestion of Brown's gas, either dissolved in water or breathed, you have to be careful breathing it because it's an explosive mixture, so you have to keep the concentration of hydrogen below 4% to avoid explosivity. It has a lot of positive health effects as reported in sports medicine and other fields. But I think it's an interesting direction to explore.
Well, my hope is that you're not just talking about it, but that you're actually going to do something. Because I've heard many good ideas from people, and I don't know what they're expecting that, you know, I'm going to pull somebody out of my hat who can do that. We have lots of good ideas, but what we need is people following through on them. Are you one of those people?
Well, yeah, I just received from George Wiseman in Canada a device for producing Brown's gas. So he's been very active for the past 20 years. I heard him for the first time.
Yeah, I'm familiar with his name.
By Tom Cowan. And he's giving a workshop perhaps as early as the end of the current month for people around the world who are willing to manufacture these devices, which he has not patented, but he could have. He hasn't done it. And for $10,000, he will share his knowledge on where to obtain the parts and implement his design, which is actually a good design. So I've seen the machine, set it up, works well. So I'm thinking about setting that up for Europe.
Right, and the money is always, you know, it's always what it is. And I again recommend talking to Harry Rhodes, not because this is a Reich kind of thing, but because Harry's very interested in all sorts of projects. And he has, as I understand it, he may even have access to a great deal of money. And so he has a site called Only Results Count. And I recommend that there be some coalescing of forces, which is well known in anthroposophy. Anthroposophists are not very good at that unless it's for Waldorf education or biodynamic farming. And so, we need to expand our ability to work together and form, consolidate ideas and pursue them to the end to see how they are and if they will work. I would be very interested in that aspect. And yet I also hope that Mr. Wiseman is aware that it is nanotechnology is not just in the vaccines. It is something we've been breathing for 3 decades now.
Thank you, Michael. Let's just end it with this question, which is essentially, could you talk just a little bit more on the cell phone being used as a weapon?
Aha. Oh yes, I have the
and then we'll have to wrap it up because it is getting on 12:30. So we're actually 2.5 hours into this. So
right. So gosh, I have the perfect response to that, but can I find it? Well, okay, I'll just tell you what I remember. I know where it is. Yes, the cell phone. Regarding the cell phone, it is like a transmitter, transceiver in itself, not for your calls, not for your internet connectivity, but for all manner of things having to do with your particular frequency. Each of us has a unique frequency. And with you carrying that bit of technology around, it already knows your frequency. It reads frequencies. It reads frequencies in your environment. It is so sophisticated primarily because of that phased array antenna sort of thing. And again, to remind you that the military made the cell phone, just as it made the television, just as it made the computer. And they kept it for at least a generation, which used to be 30 years. I think it's less now, before allowing consumers to have it and big profits to be made by telecoms, et cetera. So remember that it's like the military has frequencies that you do not have, but they have your frequencies because this iPhone in particular is a very sophisticated surveillance technology that can also be used to actually transmit, really, just a moment. I have exactly the thing here. Let's just look at this. It's very short.
Charger plugged in. Yeah. What's what happen when I plug it in? It becomes a transmitter for electric. Right, look how far it transmits it. So if you're lying in bed right next to your head, that is all going into your head.
What is it? Signals?
That's electric.
Electric.
Oh, yeah. With your phone.
Yeah, look at it.
That's why you know. Watch what happens when you put the phone up when it's charging.
So that is going right into your body now. That electrical stops is going into the phone. It's going
So we see that, yeah, it's a lot more than a convenience and a comfort and an addiction. It's a weapon system.
All right. So we're going to end there and
can I
check it
say
out right now.
a little closing prayer?
Yes.
Very short.
Yes.
May the power of Christ and Michael help us to face the challenges of this era for our own personal karma and for the future of humanity.
Amen.